All right, on today's episode, we interviewed Michael and Meredith, where we talked about what it looks like for a couple to basically put a plan in place to go find a business, vet some businesses, and ultimately buy a background screening company, based here in Houston in our backyard, and really what that first year looked like and some of the mechanics and challenges they faced along the way. So, Casey, what's some of your takeaways?
I love the fact, Michael's an attorney, Meredith has her finance degree, and together, they really got to sit down at the table. They're a young couple. They really started thinking about the future of their family, how to get there, building that generational wealth. And the smartest thing to do, in my opinion, right now, and where things are at, is to go out and buy a company from somebody that's looking to retire. Sounds like they got an amazing deal. They're going through, they're getting the reps, but man, they didn't spend 5 years. It took them a couple of years to search and find it, but when they found it, they were ready to go and they closed. Just an incredible, inspiring podcast.
Yeah, the other thing too to think about, I've never really thought much about background screening as a business, but it does get you into a kind of a really critical or crucial part of a business, right? Because their customers is usually that HR director or someone around compliance, that kind of person on the other side, right? That is ordering the screenings for people. And so it gets you to a decision maker that you could really, done correctly, start to expand out into. So kind of a cool little space and probably some interesting
Very
things.
cool.
And it'll be interesting to see what they accomplish over the next couple of years. Let's hop right into it.
If you're looking to buy, sell, or scale a company in the lower middle market, this is a do not miss event on May 3rd, 2025 here in Houston. We have a huge lineup. Walker Dybel of Buy Then Build. We've got the CEO of Flippa, who's going to be here to talk about all the ways that people are buying businesses online. And we've got several other people like Roman Basie to talk about business structures, how you do it from a legal standpoint. We're going to be talking about independent sponsors. We're going to be talking about how to do fundraising for your business acquisition, how to structure your financing. And it goes on and on and on. The information is going to be phenomenal. We're going to bring value packed. This is not a guru session. This is all about connecting you with the right people, putting your businesses together, getting it to the next stage. This day is full, it's power packed. We want to invite you out again, May 3rd, 2025, here in Houston. Get signed up. It's going to be one heck of a conference. We are excited about having it.
Meredith, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you much, Feras.
Yeah, really excited to hear your story about you guys making an acquisition. I know you guys came out to our conference this last year, so it's going to be exciting. So why don't you dive in and tell us?
Maybe tell the listeners just kind of, what you guys bought, and then kind of we can dive into maybe what led you to start to look for that business, right? What did you guys do before then, and what kind of led you to want to make that change?
Yeah, I'll start with my background and then we can go from there. So I grew up here in Houston. I went to school at SMU in Dallas. I got a finance degree and I worked in commercial real estate for a few years. And I was enjoying it, but I was, after some time, not really feeling like it was something that I wanted to do long term, but I didn't necessarily know what that was going to look like. And that was kind of when Michael introduced me to the ETA space.
And I'm an attorney. I was born and raised in Dallas, started practicing in Dallas, then moved down to Houston. I did a lot of finance, still do a lot of finance and kind of M&A adjacent type work. So I did a lot of deals for my clients and saw them really being actively involved in building businesses, building platforms. It really kind of sparked my interest. At some point along the way, I read that famous Harvard Business Review book about, buying and running a small business yourself. And that really kind of got the wheels turning in my head that this is something anyone can go do. So between that and listening to podcasts such as your own and just reviewing other material in the space, I got really interested in the idea of purchasing a company for us to operate as a family.
It's a pretty exciting story because I'll tell you similar to you guys, I spent years in doing finance startup, but I was also helping people put deals together. And I had a client that showed me kind of the leverage buyout using SBA, and I helped them execute. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can do this myself. And so I know that too, but I read the Harvard Business Journal after I made my acquisition. I should have read that before because I made so many mistakes, so it's kind of quite interesting. Clients can motivate us to jump, but I'm so glad you guys did it. You pulled the trigger, you did it.
And speaking of, it's important. We always stress having the right team, right? In terms of, if I don't know financial structuring, I really need to have a mortgage broker helping me, right? If I don't know the legal side, I need to have someone legal side. And so it's good that you already had that. So you already knew what to look for. You're able to kind of help guide y'all's acquisition, right? And I think, that's an important thing for people to understand. A lot of these deals, none of it is hard, but it is a lot of different pieces. And it's about really getting kind of enough depth, whether you know that or someone else on the team knows that to help get these deals across the finish line.
So Michael, you obviously told Meredith about it. So tell us about the search process. So y'all are sitting there at the dinner table. You have kids, right?
No kids yet.
No kids.
No kids.
Okay. So together you guys said,
Not
hey, let's
yet.
go. Nice. So then tell us that process. How did this come about?
Yeah, so I had been practicing for a number of years at this point, and we were actually searching while we were both continuing to maintain full-time jobs. So it was kind of a part-time search for 2 or 3 years, signing a lot of NDAs, reviewing a lot of SIMs, really a brokered search because we didn't have the time to go try and source off-market type deals. But yeah, it was really dinner conversations. We would sit down and I would present, here, I've signed an NDA. We've got this SIM. Do you want to take a look at this and kind of have a discussion about what we think the strengths or weaknesses or opportunities or threats of each of these kind of different business opportunities are?
And were you guys looking just in Houston, in Texas, nationwide? What was kind of at least the thesis, right, in terms of both location and asset class or business type?
Absolutely. So geographically, we were really kind of constrained primarily in Houston. I think if we had found a great deal in the making in Austin or Dallas, we might have been able to be convinced. But, we were setting up to kind of start building a family, start setting roots down here in Houston. So we wanted to stay here if possible. Beyond that, we were kind of industry agnostic, but both coming from a professional services type background, we kind of lean towards business to business services type deals.
Okay.
So Meredith, with your finance background, right? Because we talk about finance, and then they teach you things in school, you learn things and all that good stuff.
And none of it really applies until you go do a real deal.
So did you get a whole new education going through this process of putting the deal together?
Yeah, it was interesting because my background is mainly in real estate finance, so it's slightly different. You're looking at it from a different perspective, but it was definitely helpful when we were planning out, looking at financials of different companies and figuring out what made sense to move forward with. So definitely helpful.
Got it. And so then tell us about what were some of the kind of businesses you did look at, and then ultimately, tell us about the business you bought.
Yeah. So we looked at, accounting firms. We looked at engineering or architectural firms, even some law firms, a variety of different professions.
Yeah, you do have that little checkbox. It's actually, for those that are listening, because I've looked into it, it's not easy for other people to own a law firm if you're not a lawyer. And I'm not a lawyer, unfortunately.
That's
but
correct,
apparently
yeah.
there are certain states that let you. So that's why there's no publicly traded law firms.
That's exactly right. Though I think KPMG, or one of the big four accounting firms, is trying to get in through one of those states that lets you now. Yeah. So that was a particular advantage. There's just not a lot of, I would say, liquidity in that market generally. A lot of people who are retiring are just kind of shutting their business down or handing it to whoever's already in line. But on the flip side, there's hardly any buyers in that space as well. So that was really an interesting thing that still is kind of something kicking around in my head. We looked at some non-professional services as well, particularly some retail type businesses, a spa, stuff like that. But ultimately, we kind of decided that since both of our backgrounds were in professional services, B2B seemed like the choice to go.
Okay.
That led us to BackgroundConnect, which is our pre-employment screening wonder firm. Does background checks, drug tests, physicals, basically any solution that you need to do before you hire someone, we can help you fix it.
Got it. So maybe let's dive into that a little bit more, though. So the company, is it a physical store? Is it purely, remote? And how big of a company are we talking about?
So it can be fully remote. We do have a small office. I honestly work from home most of the time. So it's really nice that we have the flexibility. We can work with clients all over the country. It's all just on the computer. And the company was pretty small. We had, let me think, I think there was 4 employees when we bought it. It's our first acquisition. Yeah. And we just, honestly, I wasn't as comfortable doing a huge deal. I think he would have been more comfortable doing it, at least from the get-go. Now, thinking about it, potentially buying other background check companies would be a cool idea in the future.
I'll tell you that it doesn't matter how big of a business you buy. It's the fact that you set out a goal, you went out and achieved your goal, and then that starts to create some critical mass. And then you start to build off of that, because you guys now you're going to figure out all kinds of things along the way. And so I bought an oilfield service company in Oklahoma, but I had done multiple startups for most of my career. So I'm used to being able to barely make payroll. That was like one of the things that you always deal with, and, it was a smaller business, but we're still there. We're still in a great market. I think, it's going to be great. But when I met Feras and Ben, for us to get our money out and to do it right and everybody to be able to be bigger, we had to go for a bigger deal. Right. So now we're taking a company that's doing close to 4 million EBITDA, and we make that acquisition. And I had to learn along the way. Right. And I look back and I'm like, man, I made a lot of mistakes.
No, and I would say, big or small. I mean, you're just getting different kinds of headaches. They all have their own headaches and own challenges, right? And bigger always sounds cool, but there's also a lot bigger of problems to solve. And just so kudos on getting it done.
We're making our mistakes on a small scale, so that's good. But there's also cons of building more structures and everything in place.
Got it. And so why was the seller selling, right? What did you guys buy it for and how'd you finance it?
Yeah. So it was a kind of a classic situation where the seller is, getting up there in age and looking to retire. And he had kids who weren't particularly interested in taking over the business. So he's kind of trying to figure out what his exit options were. He had listed it through a broker and it had been around for a little bit on the market, but not too long. We ended up buying it for between 3 and 3.5 times cash flow. And it was totally self-raised equity financed as well as an SBA loan. So a pretty straightforward deal.
Got it. And so 3 to 3.5. And then what was the cash flows at the time?
Yeah. So cash flows were a smidge under $500,000.
$500,000. Okay. So perfect. Yeah. I mean, good deal size, perfect SBA kind of down the middle type of deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. From a deal structuring standpoint, it was all very straightforward.
And I noticed you say cash flow instead of EBITDA. So did you look at that metrics differently, or how did when you did your valuation? Because I know EBITDA is a myth, right?
It's what is it? Earnings before
interest, tax, depreciation.
No, I know what's the unofficial one everyone says, where it's earnings before everyone throws whatever they can to get in there.
Right.
Earnings before all your real expenses.
Yeah, exactly. We looked at it as, the cash flow it was producing as well as the owner's salary. In this kind of lower market, a lot of these deals are trading on SDE, seller's discretionary earnings, which is what the business is producing as well as what the owner, who is a critical piece of the employment situation, is taking home.
So did y'all back into okay, this is what the owner's making and this is what we're going to keep, and then the rest we're going to reinvest in the business? How did you guys kind of look at it from your evaluations of doing that?
Yeah, that's generally right. I think, our expectation was to kind of do slow changes at the start. So not needing a ton of further equity, further cash flow investment up front, but down the road, understanding that as the loan gets paid down, our equity appreciates, we're going to be getting a large IRR once this is all said and done.
That's pretty amazing. And so when we look at real estate, we buy an asset, you get your tenant in. Let's just say it's a single family resident. That person's paying rent. You're getting depreciation, you're getting some amortization, but ultimately you're paying that mortgage, right? You're paying it off in time. And most of the time you're financing, it's like a 30-year mortgage. So it's going to take time to really start to see that. But with SBA, you've got a 10-year note, right? And so really at the 5-year mark, you're really starting to really hammer in a lot of that pay down. And you're able to take some of that excess cash flow and make decisions in there as you build your business. Hopefully you grow that business. But you're right. You only had to put 10% down. And so that IRR, when you're all said and done, should be fairly significant if the business is successful, even if you don't grow it by leaps and bounds.
No, people forget about, people really look at one thing or the other. They either hyperfixate, usually it's cash flow, but they forget about all the other intangibles, right? Whether it's appreciation, whether it's, depreciation, whether it's paid down to the note. I mean, all that compounds to give you a good exit. But maybe to give people more specifics, right, in terms of the structure that Casey's getting at. I mean, so you said you were roughly 500,000, so that means you bought it in that 1.5, 2 million range, right? So you probably put down 300,000 ish. Is that about ballpark 200 to 300? I mean, I'm guessing all in.
Yeah, that's around right.
And so then the business is cash flowing 500. How much is it after debt service?
Around 200.
So then you brought 200 to 300, but each year you're pulling out 200. So your ROI, right, to kind of thread the needle, I mean, you're 80 to 120%, right? Depending on how, where the math lies. Which,
on year one, exactly.
Which is very, very attractive, obviously.
Absolutely. The flip side is,
you're paying yourself.
No, and you're paying down the note. I agree. I'm talking about just a straight ROI. And that's what, people kind of gloss over. So my ROI on investment, that's why you lever up, right? That's the difference between good debt and bad debt. Right. Levering up, I now am getting a very, very attractive ROI on that $200,000. By that $200,000, I could have put it in a CD for 4.5%, right? Or I can go buy a business and get, 100%, right? Which one's more attractive? Oh, and I'm also paying down a note and getting other intangibles. And
so Meredith, was this kind of the finance conversation you guys were having, or was it more about, hey, we just need to get a business and get it done and get it going? Were y'all having these conversations when you were thinking about the investment?
Yeah, of course, we were having both of those conversations. I think it was down to deal size and type of company. I think that what attracted us to this company, as Michael was saying, is the kind of the B2B, the idea that is remote or in office was something that we were more comfortable with. We decided overall that it made sense for me to kind of step in as an operator and for Michael to kind of continue with his job. So it was definitely something that I needed to be comfortable running. So after looking into a handful of businesses, this seemed to be the perfect fit.
Got it. And how long did it take you to find it, start to finish?
I mean, again, we had been searching for a couple of years, just part-time search, trying to find the deal that made sense. Once we got it under LOI, I think we were ready to close about 3 months later. It took a little bit of time to work through some legal issues, licensing issues. At that point, we were middle of November, and the seller was kind of like, guys, can we just wait until January 1st to help the tax bill out a little bit? So It ended up being probably 5 months.
Got it. Awesome.
Was there any seller carry involved in the deal?
Yes. Seller's got a note for around 10 or 15%.
Nice. So y'all did the standard good structure SBA, well thought out. And, that's hard in the search, right? Because you're talking to owners, you're trying to put a deal together, and there's always this standard issue, right? Why would I carry, right? And then you start talking about net working capital. And those are the two that just get long in the tooth. And for some reason, the people that own these companies, these boomers that are moving through, they haven't thought about these things, right? So did y'all have to go through an educational process with the seller, or did the broker do a good job? How was that conversation?
Yeah, the broker did a pretty good job, but we certainly had to talk through the seller, and we ended up negotiating that at length. Ultimately, I think the seller kept most of the working capital, and we just ended up financing it, ended up making sense for our deal.
Okay.
But yeah, there was certainly a lot of educational aspects of getting the seller to understand what the deal process is. I mean, it's weird from our perspective. We kind of consider ourselves somewhat experts in the deal process, particularly because I've done just a large amount of deals in my professional work. So there was some education going that way there. But obviously on the operational side, the seller knows everything about the business, and we know next to nothing. So there's a lot of education going both ways. So it was kind of a good push and pull.
Yeah, and for those listeners, I mean, whenever you're buying from a person that, they're retiring, that's probably the business they've done most of their life, if not maybe just at least the most recent part of their life. That's all they live and know. And on those kinds of deals, probably 50% of your time, one way or another, is tied to educating the seller, right? And kind of holding their hand through the process of what to expect, why they're going to, always get defensive on any change. And then you have to explain the mechanics and, oh, your appraisal didn't come back what you said it was. Of course, something has to change. Well, you kind of have to work to make it. We've had all these issues, right? But it's about patience. And I think it's these kind of deals are the most critical of having good rapport with your seller. Like, you don't want to come off as the slime ball that's difficult to work with. That's, just trying to force numbers to work, right? It's really about building relationship and rapport. And that's what Casey does great. I mean, he goes out there, he goes belly to belly with our sellers. And, we spend a lot of time cultivating and nurturing those relationships.
Yeah, we had a conversation yesterday with a guy. I love his business, love what he's doing. He just doesn't know if he wants to sell or not. He's kind of just putting it out there. And it was great because, our senior analyst, Ben, had really did a great job getting that out of him in the initial call. It was like, hey, why are you selling? He's like, I don't really think I am. He's like, Benchmark called me and we did this and I'm just looking. But when we started having a conversation, I just knowing that up front, I told him, I said, hey, I know you're not wanting to sell right now, and that's okay. Are you okay just starting to build a relationship with us? Can we meet for coffee, or can I take you to lunch in a couple of weeks? He's like, I'm going to be in Houston in a couple of weeks. Would love to have coffee with you. And just starting a relationship. Last year, and this is a lot for our listeners, guys. Last year we had a deal that we worked 9 months on to close. It fell out at, $75,000 later, it fell out. We did not close. But the seller just texted me the other day, a text of his brother who's climbing Mount Everest, and he knows that I climb. And he texted me the other day, and we started dialoguing. And I'm going to take him golfing in a couple months because
we're going to buy that business one day.
One day, and it's building that pipeline, right? It's like these people are you can't force them to exit, and you can't force them. So do you guys, when you guys were searching, I mean, any type of deals that you were just kind of like, man, we wanted it really bad. It was a perfect deal, but just couldn't make it work with the sellers?
I don't know that we encountered any deals I would say were perfect deals. We wanted that we couldn't work with the sellers. There were almost some deals that looked very interesting, but because of issues with building rapport with the sellers, not just issues that we weren't able to connect with them, but issues that we felt like they weren't necessarily being transparent with us, made us back off the deal a little bit because we were concerned that we might not be seeing the full picture.
Yeah, I know. So then let's talk about once you guys closed, right? How has it been, right? You're obviously a little over a year, so 13 months into it, I think.
Yes.
How's it gone so far? How do you feel? What were the changes you did? What were the things that you regret doing, right? Also, because those always happen, just to kind of listeners to start thinking about what it looks like in that first year.
Yeah, of course. So it's been going really well. We've made a lot of improvements, both with technology and efficiency. That was kind of our main focus for the first year, is just making improvements where we could. And now, as I mentioned, since it's a smaller company, you're building a lot of what maybe wasn't there before. So right now we're working on building marketing and sales funnels, and yeah, it's been going pretty well. It's been very interesting to learn the industry. Obviously, we both didn't come from the background screening industry, so that was a very large learning curve in the beginning. But yeah.
Break down. So y'all were probably going through looking at the business, and we all have these, right? You're starting to build your 100-day game plan, you close. And so what were some of those inefficiencies y'all saw like during due diligence that you kind of just picked up right when y'all closed and started working on?
Yeah. So some inefficiencies, the email system was pretty old. There was a lot of calling for things that could easily be automated or done via email or other programs. The platform where people place orders and where our team works on the orders was pretty outdated. So one of the big things we did was move to a better system that can do a whole lot more. We can offer our clients a lot more, and that's going to help us scale, where we're going to be able to get bigger clients because our new system is going to have all of these extra bells and whistles.
Just to add on to that, I would say the seller was really kind of running the business like a very small shop, leanly, as makes sense, but he was running it through his own phone. So if there was ever an issue with a client needing an order or with an applicant working through an order, he would be calling that person directly or having them call him and just working through the issue, it's very effective to solve the problem, but certainly not time efficient for what an owner and a leader of the company, I think, should be doing if they're wanting to focus on scaling and growing the business to where it can be.
Got it. Well, so that's probably actually a good segue to the question I was going to ask, which is you're a year into it. Has cash flows met what you expected? Have they gotten better or have they gone backwards? Because a lot of times, right, that first year, you actually typically almost go backwards a little bit, right? And then you kind of work through what we call the dugout, right? And dig out and just really, you're kind of making the right changes that give you the longer term success. But sometimes that means investing in equipment, investing in software, getting the right people in the seats, those things actually have a negative impact. But then you start to come out the backside with a much stronger team and you start to kind of hum. And so how has it gone?
Yeah. It's, as you said, we put a lot of money invested into building out this infrastructure, and 2024 with the election year and everything, it wasn't doing as hot as we were kind of hoping it would. But I think that everything that we've put in, we're excited about and know that there's going to be good growth from that. So
yeah, call it the J curve. It's a little bit of a J curve, right? You close, and then you're like, you're a Houstonian, right?
Yes.
Meredith. Yeah, I don't know if you ever went to Astroworld, but I put it to that like one roller coaster where you like get on the chair, it goes up, and it goes like 5 stories, it rolls out, and it would just sit there, and then it drops, right? The sky, I think it was called the Sky Screamer.
Yes. Elevator.
Was it the Sky Screamer?
Yeah, Sky Elevator.
Elevator. Like yeah. I think it was one of my favorite rides, but that was kind of like us. Like we close, we're like going up the elevator, we're pumped, the thing comes out, and then it's just like a free fall, and you're like, okay, problem solved. Right. How do we get through it?
Right.
So I guess sounds like it's going all right. Still, working through things, getting some, efficiencies. What's next?
Yeah, I mean, so we made our first hire towards the end of last year ourselves, which we're very excited about. That's going super well so far. And I think we're probably looking to make another hire in the next 6 months or so. So it's really building the teams out so that the business can operate independently of Meredith's management and oversight. so that she can focus, on working on the business rather than in the business.
Yeah, this is definitely important to not always be the technician, right? You kind of have to do both sometimes, but I really harp that in people that you have to pause and work on the business. And then, you still have to work in the business too, but it's important to make sure you have time to work on the business because that's the needle mover stuff, right? It's
a great book that dives into what you're talking about is
Yes.
I don't know if you guys
E-Myth
have read
Revisited.
E-Myth Revisited. It's a really simple book, but it really goes through a lot of that kind of like, man, I'm a manager to a leader to a visionary. I mean, it's all these different kind of things that kind of.
I'm the baker that bakes great cupcakes. My friends tell me to make a cupcake shop, and I go start my cupcake shop, and it usually fails 9 times out of 10. Why?
Right.
Right. And so there's a difference between working in it and versus on it. So.
And that delicate balance, right? Because someone's got to work in it.
Yeah, and I do make great cupcakes, right, Casey? All right. Then any plans to acquire another business or maybe buy one that you're going to merge into this? Or are you guys just looking at just doing kind of, traditional marketing sales and just let it naturally grow?
I think currently we are focusing on natural growth. I think there's definitely a potential for buying another business in the future, but probably wait, a year or two and kind of reassess from there.
Who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal customer?
We work with small to mid-sized companies. We work mainly in the pre-employment space. So anyone looking to hire someone, we do all types of screening for pre-employment.
Got it. And would you say your biggest competitor is kind of the full HR shop solutions, right, on the software side?
No, because actually a lot of our clients have left using those type of companies because they aren't as good on the background screening. ADP is a good example. ADP is known for payroll and they have a background screening component, but we've had a lot of clients that have left them because they were slow or they didn't know what they were doing and yada, yada. And so we've been able to stand out with our customer service, with our knowledge, with our boutique, if you will, experience. So I wouldn't say that we compete with the big guys or anything like that.
So would a temp agency use your service? Because I would imagine they're doing all their background. They need somebody to do that stuff. Is that one of your?
Yeah, we have some temp agency clients. I mean, we're lucky enough to work with a wide range of clients. We work with offshore drilling companies. We work with hotels. We work with country clubs, everything, manufacturing, pretty much anything under the sun. We've been very lucky to work with.
Got it. Also, and actually maybe one last question before we move to the rock around. We didn't talk about, so what was revenues? We talked about kind of what is take home, but I'm trying to understand what is the margins in kind of the screening business?
Yeah. So the margins were pretty high when we bought, largely because it was being run, very leanly. Revenue was just a hair under $1 million. So I think, margins were pretty close to 50%. Got it.
And then what's the average cost of a background screening?
It depends, but I would say criminal background is 100 to 150, and then any additional screens, so drug screens, verifications, anything like that, will get you maybe $15 to $50 more. So typically they're slightly under 200 if you're doing a pretty comprehensive background check.
Yeah, so I can imagine if you're working with an offshore company where they're going to have labor that's going to come through. It's through seasonal, right? They're going to come out, they're going to have jobs. They're going to do the background screening. That person goes off. They need to probably do the background screening again because all of those have to have drug screening, all that stuff has to be done. So I imagine that's a very good business for you, or those seasonal or, when they do a lot of work. We should introduce you to the company we talked to the other day. They're hiring 165 people for literally 90 days.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's easy to call on. I'm telling you. I'm gonna send that email to you.
Yeah, we'll figure out the commission structure offline. So.
Yeah, good.
Just come to the conference. That's all good.
We're lucky. We have a lot of clients that will also screen all of their employees annually. We like I said, we work with country clubs, so some of them really want to screen all of the employees that work with children regularly. We have clients that want to do motor vehicle records annually. That helps with their insurance costs. So it's very nice because once we get a client, we'll have them for years to come, and they'll be doing regular screens. And also, as you would imagine, when you're about to hire someone, you're probably looking at, a handful of candidates for one position. So you're going to screen all of them for one position.
Yeah, and maybe, and I don't know if you guys have given thought to it, but thinking about your business, where it gets interesting actually is also leveraging, just the fact that you guys do have a lawyer on the team also, right? And really be a compliance company. It's not really just screening is one piece, but we're here to help you be compliant or, at a higher level.
Yeah,
that's where you start to really sell those same customers a lot more services, right? I mean, you kind of said it, drug screening is one of them, but like, what about all the other things? I like the motor vehicle example, right? Like by doing this, we actually drive efficiencies for you here, and you already have that gateway into the business. And so, it gets kind of interesting if you start to figure out how do you really expand horizontally in that space too. So.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, cool. We ready to jump in the rock around?
Let's do the rock around.
All right. This is where we ask our guests 3 questions. So guys, what do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah. So my absolute favorite activity in my free time is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Though I like most combat sports, I love jiu-jitsu. There's a very technical and intellectual aspect to it while being a very physical sport. And I think all combat sports are great about getting you into a flow state and being 100% in the moment where you are, not worrying about the bills at home or whatever else may be going on in your life.
I'm not going to lie. Whenever you started, I thought you were going to say Brazilian steakhouse. And
maybe
I'm just hungry. So
You're hungry. Meredith, you?
I enjoy Pilates, and also we're lucky enough to have extended family all in Houston, so we spend a lot of time with our family.
Yeah, you guys should come to the office, come hang out with us sometime. So we're not far. We're on the energy corridor. So
Okay.
All right. Next question: most memorable moment in your business journey?
I would say, as I alluded to earlier, when we switched to a new software system for all of our background checks, it was definitely a large undertaking. Both my team and all of our clients had to learn this new software. And so it was kind of scary to think about, what problems could we face with switching this huge system over. And I'm proud to say we did it really well. We didn't lose any clients, and everything worked out really, really well.
Awesome.
Congrats. All right. And your last question here is, what is y'all's favorite tool or resource?
I would say ChatGPT, which I know isn't a new one. I use it every day for, rewording things. I use it for creating Excel formulas to analyze data, for sales scripts, marketing plans. I mean, you name it, you can use it for so many things. So it's definitely my favorite tool.
And then I'd add in, I might turn it back around on you guys a little bit here. My favorite tool is actually podcasts like this one, and there's a couple others in the space. But I think each episode really is kind of a mini case study to think about how someone else has done their deal. And I'll tell you, listening to these types of podcasts is what gave me the confidence to kind of take the jump and go, achieve on the deal that we wanted to do ourselves.
100%. And I mean, heck, even us hosting, I learn something on every single podcast. I mean, it's super valuable. That's why we do it too, right? There's it's a big, broad world out there. And some people are very, like, what's the word? They small-minded, right? And think, oh, everybody's a competitor and this or that, versus people that we attract on the show and, ourselves included. It's really, hey, it's a freaking huge market. Like, let's all learn and grow and go do stuff together, right? And accomplish things, whether that do deals together or share knowledge to go, learn from each other on what we can do. Because, one little piece of information can completely unlock and solve a problem for a whole nother acquisition. I mean, it's that kind of thing.
I even think there's a bigger conversation around it, which is at the end of the day, there's a tremendous amount of boomers. A big part of our country is small business. And there's not enough of us, the people that are willing to take the risk to transition these companies. And so there's a whole bigger meaning of what I think we're doing, which is transitioning our country and our economy and all of these things. And by everybody taking that risk and being able to move that small business and keeping it going, it's tremendous. I mean, people don't realize how much our economy relies on small business. It's massive. And so we're making a bigger part of the day by taking these risks. And financially, we should win at some point. But man, I'm really proud of you guys. You went out and did it. You found it. You searched, and you did it as a couple. And that's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
So Meredith and Michael, how can people get a hold of you?
You can reach me by email. My email is mschlinkert@backgroundconnect.com.
Yep. BackgroundConnect.com is our website, and we're both on LinkedIn. It's an unusual last name, so we're probably the only ones.
All right. So yeah, we'll definitely have that in the show notes for the listeners. I'm sure it'll be easy to get a hold of you guys. But hey, guys, thank you both very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.